Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Schrum, and we are joined here in 2025 with the North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tanya.
Happy New Year, Tanya.
Any resolutions for 2025?
Keep it together. Keep it together.
It's the only one for all of us, I think.
That's all I can hope for at this point. We'll talk later in the year and see how it's going. A resolution we all must keep. Well, we have a great first edition for 2025. We're going to start off with Jennifer and some Mark Larson appreciation.
Yes, we are. It's become kind of a tradition here at the Journal to have, we do our top 10 stories of the year, but we are word people. We are story people. And Mark Larson is an image guy. He is, if you haven't already gotten familiar with his work, Mark Larson's photos have been in the Journal for, I want to say, decades. Yes. And he is a retired professor from then Humboldt State University. And I believe Thad was his student at one time. Is that right?
I did take Intro to Photojournalism from Mark Larson a virtual lifetime ago.
A virtual lifetime ago. And, you can see him out. He'll probably have on a hat and he'll probably have on a red jacket is, I think, how you spot Mark Larson in a crowd. Mm-hmm. And he will definitely have his camera out. Don't be scared. He will make you look cute. I always love looking at his pictures when we have, throughout the year, we have events happening and we tend to text Mark sometimes at the last minute and say, hey, are you free to shoot this, this music festival, this gathering, this art event? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is yes, I'm going anyway, because he has got to be the busiest retired person I know. He and his wife go out walking. They spent the pandemic walking every single day, pretty much, and then taking a different walk, a new place every week, I think it was. And while he's out walking, out in nature, he would take these wonderful photos, which we've actually featured before. He also goes to pretty much every event in Humboldt County. Are you having a festival? You're probably going to see Mark there. And he is not really, it would be impossible to call his tastes. If you meet him, you'd think, oh, this is a gentleman of a certain age. He must like A, B, and C. What you might not guess is that he's got a pretty serious tattoo artist rock star daughter. And which is why he loves to go and shoot the Tattoo Expo every year. His interests are so varied and his appreciation of Humboldt County is really the things that makes his photos really special. So in his year in review, the other thing that is, and always a guarantee about Mark's year in review, is that trying to choose the photos for print is folly. Our poor art director, Holly Harvey, is in there desperately trying to sort through which ones, we want to make sure we have this important moment, but look at this incredible color on this one. There's just so much to choose from. And as we sorted through all of them, which, by the way, all of them are going to be online. There's 70 plus photos, I believe. They're just incredible.
They're all phenomenal.
They really are. And the thing, when I say that Mark loves Humboldt County, he does not love it the way that people love an idol. He loves every part of Humboldt, warts and all. So you are going to see photos of people running the Clam Beach run, right? Pounding through the water, holding onto a rope. You were going to see people doing like the logging games and sawdust flying everywhere, action photos of the kinetic races and water landings and splashdowns. You're also going to see people protesting. You're going to see people who are standing up for each other, whether it is for bodily sovereignty and abortion rights, or whether it's the protests at Cal Poly Humboldt and in Arcata for Palestine. It has been a wild year in Humboldt, and he takes the same interest and the same focus, curiosity, and humanity to photos of people, you know, protesting on campus as he does with, say, the Chinatown Festival in Old Town. He is as interested in little kids getting their faces painted as he is in a theater performance. And he takes some fantastic portraits of people. They're still photos and their faces, and you really get a sense of character from them and the character of people in Humboldt. But he also has some fantastic action shots. I'm thinking of the rodeo photos, for one. He also does really great work with music and dance. You might remember the cover of the journal, the very rainbow bright cover of the journal for the Samba Parade and the 50th anniversary of the North Country Fair. That was one of Mark's photos and his photo essay. His photos of the last Eureka Street Art Festival are really a great tribute. And I know that when those images have faded on the walls around us, we're going to look back at them and it's just like springtime happening on the page, right down to the last wall slug. The other thing, I know it sounds like I can't get over Mark, but that's only because I can't. As much as he loves to shoot a jazz festival or people just being their eccentric best at the mushroom festival, he also loves nature. And I think the otters speak to him.
The otter was amazing. When you were talking about his beautiful portrait, I'm like, even if it's an otter,
right?
He's going to capture its soul.
He took beautiful photos of that sea lion while it lived in our surrounds. And, sadly, when it died, he reported on that. But of a given Tuesday or something, which he knows is our press day, he might send me an email. Thad, I hope you get these emails too. He might send me an email saying, hope your day's not too stressful. Here are some otters. And he'll send me just like 3 or 4 photos of otters just being ridiculous over in Trinidad or on the Mad River, wherever he's at. And they're just playing and happy. And I have to say, it is soul affirming. And I'm just very grateful that we have him and grateful that he puts together this slideshow for us every year. It's a really great way to reflect back on the year and focus on who we are as a county and the best of us, really, as we look at it.
It's also just amazing to have a homegrown talent such as he to be connected to the North Coast Journal.
Yeah, we're very lucky, and he's also got the institutional knowledge of a lifetime lived in Humboldt. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't miss much. We get a lot of tips from him, a lot of information about something happening, and just enjoy his work. If you see him, ask if he'll sign your copy.
Before we move on, I just want to say that one of my favorite things about Mark, and there are many, but is that he signs off all of his emails with "Enjoy this day!" ! And it's just every time it's like, I got my marching orders from Mark. I gotta get out there and enjoy this day.
Like an otter.
His own carpe diem.
Mm-hmm.
And you should. I mean, I say that every day is paradise when you're living up on the North Coast. So you got to enjoy it, even on the rainy ones.
Especially on the rainy ones.
Well, we're going to move into 2025's first news story, and Thad is going to report on that for us.
Yeah, our California local news fellow, Annie Toe, came up with the story idea. And these are some of my very favorite story ideas. She basically said, I drove by she's new to town. She moved up from LA recently, or the LA area. And she, at one of our editorial meetings, was like, I drove by the Arcata Bike Library the other day. And it's just like, it's this old shipping container, and there's just like volunteers hanging out. And it just seemed interesting. And I was like, yeah, go spend a day there. Like, go tell us more. And so she went and hung out at the bike library. And I admit I knew that there was such a thing as a bike library, but I had no idea what it did or kind of how it worked. And so it was an education for me too. But there apparently since the 1990s has been this bike library in Arcata that has moved around and taken various forms. But its whole goal is to help people fix up their bikes and get people on their bikes affordably. So they refurbish bikes, they sell bikes, and a lot of the time there's just volunteers hanging out there on Saturdays. And so somebody can show up and say, my bike's not working, and they'll help them figure out what's wrong with it and how to fix it. And it's really this passion project from a bunch of volunteers who are just crazy about their bikes and want to spread the gospel of bicycling. It's pretty wonderful.
It is, and they also will teach you how to work on your own bike as well, which is incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm. That is the best part to me. I went with my bike.
I forgot you have firsthand bike library experience.
Yes, my bike had a cartoon flat, in the sense that it was completely flat and totally deflated like in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. And I went and they were like, that's flat. But then I sat down with these two folks and they explained what they were going to do. They showed me how, let me look at things up close and let me try doing some of the stuff. And they showed me how to fix a bike in or two, which maybe is something that some people learned when they were 10, but I did not. Okay. And it was both educational and a relief, because I don't know when the last time is you've been instructed in something as an adult, but they were just very helpful. They're very humble, and they were just very kind and not bike-splainy.
Good.
Well, and you've got to appreciate that. Even though I know how to change one of those inner tubes, I will still donate to the cause for somebody else to do it. It's such a pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, a big part of their thing too is accessibility. So it's all on kind of a pay what you can system. So if you go and need your flat fixed or need a new chain put on and can afford to donate, then that's appreciated. But they'll also do stuff for free. The idea is just to kind of raise enough funds to keep this thing going. And one of the pieces in Annie's story that I really loved is that there's some folks who have benefited from getting repairs and stuff at the bike library and maybe can't donate, but instead have made it their mission to donate supplies. And so they'll go to junkyards and yard sales and free piles and stuff and find old bike frames or old bike parts and then bring them down and donate them to the library to be repurposed, which I thought was really cool. I also thought that some of the history of the bike library was awesome. So as I said, it started in the 1990s, and there was a point when it was like really a lending library of bikes, and they had these bikes that they would refurbish and spray paint green and kind of leave all over town, with the idea that folks could just borrow a bike and ride it from one spot to the other and then leave it there for the next person to come along and borrow and ride around. Did not work out super well. Apparently, these things started ending up in the marsh. These things started getting run over for fun, and it was just like green bike mayhem, disaster scene everywhere, all over Arcata. So they came up with an idea then that they needed to start charging a deposit for folks to borrow the bikes. And then it turned out, as the years went by and kind of the makeup of the bike library changed, that the paperwork of that became a little bit burdensome. So they have stopped doing that, unfortunately. But I both love the idea of these green, borrowable bikes sitting around Arcata, and then I kind of chuckled at the mayhem that ensued, unsurprisingly, perhaps.
I do like that one made it all the way to the bay. That's kind
Yeah, I forgot that tidbit. Yes, one cited.
I want to
cited
know
down in
that
San
adventure
Francisco.
story. Sounds like a children's novel in the making. The Green Bike's Journey.
And then, I think Andy's story does a really good job of illuminating too, that is, as much as, for many people, this is kind of a fun, cute story. But also for lots of folks, a bike is their sole means of transportation and the only kind of economical means of transportation they have. And so this is really a lifeline to members of our community who really depend on their bikes working to get to work, to get to the places they need to be, and just for kind of day-to-day transportation. And so this is kind of the only avenue for some folks to get affordable help fixing their bikes, to stay mobile, to make sure they're getting to the things they need to get to. Which I was really glad that Annie's story showcases that. And she also caught up with Colin Fisk at the Coalition for Alternative Transportation Priorities, who is, the organization's focus is both on safe bike and pedestrian access, but then also on, cutting carbon emissions and talking about kind of the massive carbon footprint most of us have in just day-to-day transportation needs, and how a bicycle effectively zeroes those out. And so anything we as a community can do to, both certainly make more bike and pedestrian friendly pathways, safer pathways and stuff like that, but then also just making sure that folks who are already habituated to doing that can keep doing it is just a huge net carbon reduction. So there is just really like this multi-layered impact of, again, what is really a shipping container full of bikes and bike parts, and a lot of people willing to volunteer their time for the cause.
And it was a great way to highlight not only the carbon reduction, but I loved that she was able to get that before and after effect of how bike friendly Arcata once was, and how we're trying to continue that as it is built up, but it still, has a bit of a way to go. And it's also like anybody that's driven around Arcata in the last couple of years and versus 20 years ago know that the patience has come down, and I think that it was an important thing to highlight that, let's continue to be bike friendly and pedestrian friendly.
I gotta say, I am probably the last person that you would guess would start bike commuting, and certainly the last few weeks of rain has not made that such a great choice. But I will say that also by the time I'm done with work and I bike home, and again, I'm very lucky because I live a reasonable, even very short distance from the office. By the time I get home by car, I feel the same. But by the time I get home after biking home, I'm less stabby for sure. Breathing fresh air, feeling sunshine, actually looking at trees and hearing birds, and sometimes having a near-death experience when a truck rolls by me. They do have a different effect on you than, say, sitting in your car annoyed at the lights.
And not to mention, that's more room for dessert.
I mean, sure. Although I think Thad does remember, I tried to bring a cake into work when I first started biking. Thad, do you remember this?
I do.
It bounced out of my bike, out of the basket, and hit the street with a thud that made me realize it was a little heavy. And it broke in half. And the worst part of it, other than the fact that I had told everybody I was bringing cake and then there was no cake, but the worst part of it was having to go in this, put my bike down and go collect my cake in the street, and people driving by like, is that woman going to eat that street cake?
Eat the street cake.
Street
Well, you should
cake.
bounce down to the bike library. They might be able to hook you up with a bungee cord or something to secure that
Right?
cake next time.
Oh, I've got it solved now. I have an expanded basket, and I actually talked to them about like what to do to like carry things. They did suggest hooked bungee cords, and they suggested a plastic cover for rain, which I was like, oh, I'm not going out in the rain with this. But and the more we expand on the trails between, Eureka and Arcata, and, I see more and more people roller skating and biking and whatnot on those paths. And yeah, I think it's kind of a cool thing about Humboldt that we're becoming more bike friendly, and, just have some pity if you see me on the side of the road with like a busted cake.
She will not eat the busted cake.
I mean, definitely not the part that hit the ground.
Rest assured.
Well, personally, one of my takeaways was my daughter is 12 and has been growing at a pace faster than we can keep up with her bike needs. And so she has this bike that we probably bought her when she was 9 or 10 that is just way too small for her, and she's been wanting a new bike. But it's hard to buy a brand new bike that she's going to grow out of in a year or two. And so I, after reading Annie's story, I realized they sell refurbished bikes there for, I think it's $40 to $60 or something. So we're heading down to the bike library soon to see about getting her one. Hopefully they have kid sizes. And
maybe you can trade in the existing bike.
Indeed.
One never knows. It's, in a county that has the kind of limited mass transportation we have, and the way that you can lose a day just trying to make it to a couple of appointments. If you are able, bikes make an affordable transportation within reach for people who otherwise would be bound to bus schedules. And I think it's really great what they're doing in the bike library.
I agree. Well, before we wrap up today, is there anything else you would like to tease for this week's edition?
Let me see. You are definitely going to see a little bit of a lull in the calendar, because this is just how January is, but especially right after New Year's. There was a flurry last week of all the things you can go and do for New Year's, but then it's going to be kind of quiet. But I really suggest that you go in and look for those things that are going to feed your soul and maybe allow you into a quiet transition into the new year. Don't forget that there are lots of opportunities to go and do, say, life drawing, to sing with other people, to do craft things in workshops. There are a lot of dance classes and things. I would strongly suggest looking through the calendar, not with an eye for maybe excitement and entertainment, but maybe some soul enriching activities, because we've got them in spades.
It's a perfect way for the new year to kind of unfold. Find a new thing, a new passion.
Oh yeah, we tend to focus on deprivation, like, oh, I'm doing dry January. Oh, I'm starving myself or not eating bread. Don't do that. Eat bread.
Don't do that.
But adding something wonderful to your life is a good plan.
Instead of taking it away. Thank you, Jennifer. I think that's wonderful. And that wraps up our first show of 2025. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick up your copy today and enjoy all of the photographs. Or you can find the entire collection online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Shrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive of our North Coast community. Happy New Year.